The Alpha King stood at the altar in ceremonial black, his silver crown catching the light of 1,000 candles, and on his arm, draped in crimson silk with a smile of pure triumph, stood his mistress. Not hidden, not shameful. Displayed like a prize for every noble house in Valdres to see. Marin felt the collective gasp of the crowd ripple through the great cathedral. 500 witnesses, 500 pairs of eyes now fixed on her, the chosen mate, standing alone in her white ceremonial gown with a ring on her finger that suddenly felt like a shackle. He did not look at her. His mistress did. Ravenna's amber eyes found Marin across the marble floor, and her red lips curved into something cruel and knowing. A silent message. You were never wanted. You were never real. The high priest cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, we are prepared to begin the bonding rite, if you would? Caius finally turned his gaze toward Marin. Cold. Flat. Empty of anything resembling recognition, let alone affection. He looked at her the way one might look at a chair, an object, a necessity perhaps, but nothing more. 3 months. 3 months of cold arrangements and colder silence, and this was how it ended. Not with cruelty behind closed doors, but with humiliation before the entire kingdom. Marin's hands did not shake as she reached for her ring. Her voice did not waver as she pulled it from her finger and crossed the distance between them. The crowd held its breath. The mistress's smile faltered, and the Alpha King, for the first time since she had known him, looked uncertain. Marin pressed the ring into his palm. She is yours, she said quietly. And so is this. Then she turned and walked out of the cathedral, head high, spine straight, leaving chaos in her wake. This is not where the story ends. It is where it begins. 3 months earlier. The summons arrived at dawn, carried by a royal courier who would not meet her eyes. Marin knew what it meant before she broke the seal. Her father had finally done it. He had sold her to the crown. House Varenne had once been powerful. 3 generations ago, her ancestors had stood beside kings, commanded armies, held enough territory that maps bore their name. But that was before the debts, before the failed alliances, before her father, Lord Aldrich Varenne, had gambled away every acre, every alliance, and every shred of dignity their bloodline possessed. Now the Varenne estate was a crumbling monument to better days, staffed by servants who had not been paid in months, haunted by creditors who no longer bothered to be polite, and Marin was its last remaining asset. Well? Her father's voice cut through the morning silence. He stood in the doorway of her chamber, still wearing the clothes from last night's drinking, his face bloated and his eyes bloodshot. What does it say? Marin unfolded the parchment. The royal seal stared up at her like an accusation. I am to present myself at the palace within 3 days, she said, keeping her voice flat, giving him nothing. The Alpha King has reviewed your petition. He has accepted the arrangement. Lord Aldrich's face split into a smile that made her stomach turn. Excellent. I knew he would see the value. The Varenne bloodline is old, pure. The debt forgiveness alone will restore us. And when you produce an heir, the land grants will follow. We will be powerful again, Marin. Because of you. Because of me. As if she were a broodmare, a transaction. Father. Marin folded the letter carefully. The Alpha King has a mistress. Everyone knows this. Lady Ravenna has shared his bed for 3 years. Why would he suddenly agree to take a mate? Politics, her father said dismissively. The council has grown impatient. An alpha without an heir is an alpha without a future. Ravenna cannot give him legitimate children, so he needs a mate of proper breeding. His eyes narrowed. You should be grateful. Most women in your position would kill for this opportunity. Most women in my position did not have a father who had already tried to sell them twice before. Most women did not have a half-sister sent away to a distant academy the moment she started asking uncomfortable questions about their family's secrets. Marin thought briefly of Celia, her father's daughter from his first marriage, banished to the northern provinces 3 years ago. Their father had claimed it was for her education, but Marin had seen the fear in his eyes when Celia began searching through old documents. She wondered if Celia even knew about this arrangement. Probably not. Their father preferred to keep his schemes compartmentalized. Of course, father. Marin lowered her gaze so he would not see what burned behind it. I am grateful. She was not grateful. She was terrified. And beneath the terror, buried so deep she barely acknowledged it herself, she was furious. 3 days later, Marin stood in the throne room of the Valdris Palace and got her first look at the man who had purchased her. Alpha King Caius was nothing like the portraits. The paintings showed a stern but handsome ruler, dignified in his ceremonial robes, every inch the noble sovereign. They did not capture the sheer presence of him, the way the air itself seemed to grow heavier when he entered a room, the way every wolf in attendance instinctively lowered their eyes, their bodies responding to an alpha presence so overwhelming it bordered on suffocating. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed. Taller than any man she had ever seen, broad across the shoulders, with dark hair that fell past his jaw, and eyes the color of a winter storm. Pale gray, like frost on glass. Those eyes swept over her once, assessed her completely, and dismissed her in the space of a single breath. Lady Marin Varen, the court announcer declared, presented as candidate for the royal mate bond, per the petition of Lord Aldrich Varen. Marin curtsied deeply, exactly as protocol demanded. She could feel the stares of the court boring into her back. The whispers had already begun. She is pretty enough, I suppose. But look at that gown. Clearly they cannot afford better. I heard the Varan estate is weeks from seizure. This is a desperate move. Does she know about Ravenna? Surely she must know. Marin kept her expression serene. Let them whisper. Let them judge. She had survived worse than court gossip. Rise. The king's voice was deep and cold and utterly without inflection. Look at me. She obeyed. And when her eyes met his, she felt something strange. A flicker. A pull. Something in her chest responded to something in his, like a string being plucked in the darkness. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Had he felt it too? The council has advised me to accept this arrangement, Caius said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that advice. House Varen's bloodline is acceptable. Your health has been certified. You are of childbearing age. He listed these facts as one might list the qualities of a horse being considered for purchase. I have agreed to take you as my mate. A murmur ran through the court. Even those who had expected this outcome seemed shocked to hear it spoken aloud. However, the king's pale gray eyes held hers. I want no illusions between us. This is a political necessity. Nothing more. Do you understand? Marin held his gaze. Perfectly, Your Majesty. Something moved behind his eyes. Surprise, perhaps. As if he had expected her to flinch, to weep, to protest. She did none of those things. Good. He nodded once to his advisors. The bonding ceremony will take place in 3 months. Until then, she will reside in the East Wing. See that she has everything she needs. And without another word, without a single gesture of courtesy or kindness, the Alpha King turned and walked away, leaving Marin standing alone in the center of the throne room while the court buzzed around her like disturbed insects. She had been accepted. She had been dismissed. And somewhere in the shadows of the gallery above, she caught a glimpse of red silk and amber eyes watching her every move. The East Wing was beautiful and empty. Marin's new chambers were larger than her entire family home, decorated in shades of silver and blue, with windows that overlooked the royal gardens. Servants appeared at her door within minutes of her arrival, offering food and wine and drawing baths scented with jasmine. Not one of them met her eyes. It took her 2 days to understand why. They were not being disrespectful. They were being careful. The Alpha King's chosen mate was a position of theoretical power but practical danger. Any servant who grew too close risked being seen as taking sides. And in a court where Ravenna had reigned as unofficial queen for 3 years, taking sides could be fatal. On the third evening, the summons came. Not from the king. From her. "Lady Ravenna requests your presence in the sunroom," the messenger said, his face carefully blank. "At your earliest convenience?" Marin understood the game. An invitation phrased as a request but meant as a command. A power play dressed in politeness. She went anyway. Better to know her enemy. Ravenna was even more beautiful up close. Tall and willowy, with copper hair that cascaded past her shoulders, and amber eyes that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. She wore crimson, as always, the color of passion and blood and claiming. When Marin entered, she was reclining on a chaise like a queen holding court. Ah, the little Varan. Ravenna's smile was warm. Her scent was not. Beneath the perfume, Marin detected something sharp. Territorial. "Please sit. I thought we should become acquainted given the circumstances." Marin sat. "That is very gracious of you, Lady Ravenna." "Is it?" Ravenna's laugh was musical and cold. "I am not known for being gracious, but I am known for being direct, so let me be direct with you now." She leaned forward. "You are here because the council demanded it. Caius agreed to this arrangement because he had no choice. But make no mistake, he is mine. He has been mine for 3 years, and he will remain mine long after you have given him an heir and been tucked away in some country estate to live out your usefulness." Marin kept her expression neutral. "I appreciate your honesty." "Do you?" Ravenna tilted her head, studying her. Most women would cry, beg, try to appeal to some romantic notion of fate bonds and true mates. Her lips curled. "You just sit there. Why?" "Because I learned long ago that tears are weapons other people use against you, because I have been sold before, and I survived. Because you are not the worst thing I have faced. Because I am practical," Marin said simply. "You have something I want. I have something you need. Surely we can reach an understanding." Ravenna's eyes narrowed. "What could you possibly have that I need?" "Legitimacy." Marin held her gaze. "You have the king's heart. I do not doubt that. But you do not have his name, his crown, or his heirs. The council will never accept you as queen, but they will accept me." She paused. "I have no interest in stealing what is yours, Lady Ravenna. I simply want to survive. Perhaps we can help each other do that." For a long moment, Ravenna said nothing. Then she laughed, genuine this time, though no warmer than before. "You are cleverer than you look, little Varan." She rose, smoothing her crimson gown. "Very well. We have an understanding. Stay out of my way, give him his heirs, and I will make sure your life here is tolerable." She paused at the door. "But if you ever try to take more than what I offer, I will destroy you, and I will enjoy it." She swept out, leaving the scent of roses and venom in her wake. That night, Marin stood at her window and watched the moon rise over Valdris. She had bought herself time, perhaps even protection. Ravenna believed her to be practical, passive, willing to play the role of breeding stock in exchange for comfort. Let her believe that. Marin had learned something far more valuable from their conversation. Ravenna was afraid. Beneath the confidence, beneath the threats, the Alpha King's mistress was terrified of losing her position, which meant her hold on him was not as secure as she pretended, which meant there were cracks in this palace. Cracks that Marin intended to find. But first, she needed to understand the man she had been given to. The cold, dismissive Alpha who had looked at her like she was nothing, and yet, for just a moment, had seemed almost startled by what passed between them. "What are you hiding, Caius of Valdris? And why do I feel like my life depends on finding out?" The contract signing took place in the king's private council chamber, a room of dark wood and ancient banners where generations of Valdris rulers had made decisions that shaped the realm. Marin's father was present, practically vibrating with barely concealed greed. 3 royal advisors sat as witnesses, and at the head of the table, watching the proceedings with the same cold detachment he showed everything, sat Alpha King Caius. Marin read the document carefully, ignoring her father's impatient sighs. The terms were exactly as she had expected. She would become the official mate of the crown. Her family's debts would be forgiven. Land grants would follow the birth of an heir. In exchange, she would surrender her autonomy, her future, and any claim to happiness. Standard terms for a prison sentence. "Everything is in order," one of the advisors said. "If Lady Marin would sign here, and Lord Aldrich here as witness." Marin picked up the quill. Her father was already reaching for his. "Wait." The single word from the king froze everyone in place. Caius had not spoken throughout the entire proceeding. Now his frost-colored eyes fixed on Marin with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Leave us," he said to the room, "all of you." The advisors exchanged uncertain glances. Her father sputtered. "Your Majesty, surely the signing should be witnessed." "I said leave." There was no anger in his voice. There did not need to be. The weight of his authority was enough. Within seconds, the chamber was empty. The heavy doors closed with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. Marin sat perfectly still, the unsigned contract before her, the quill in her hand. Alone with the Alpha King for the first time. "You have not asked me any questions," Caius said. He rose from his chair and moved to the window, his back to her. The afternoon light silhouetted his broad frame. "Every other candidate who came before you had dozens. What lands would they receive? What jewels? What servants? What guarantee of status?" He paused. "You have asked nothing." "Would the answers change anything?" Marin asked. He turned to look at her. Something passed across his expression. "No." "Then there is no point in asking." Silence stretched between them. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "You know about Ravenna." It was not a question. "Everyone knows about Ravenna," Marin said. "And yet you signed anyway. Or you will sign." "Why?" Marin set down the quill. She met his gaze directly, knowing it might be seen as a challenge, not caring. "Because you are offering me something I have never had, Your Majesty. A cage with a lock I might eventually learn to pick. My father's house offered no such possibility." He stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "You are not what I expected," he said finally. There was something almost like curiosity in his tone, or perhaps discomfort. "The council chose you because of your bloodline. Old blood. Strong wolves in your ancestry. Good breeding potential." He said the words flatly, clinically. "They did not tell me you would be like this." "Like what?" "Awake." He moved closer, and Marin felt the temperature in the room drop. Not metaphorically. Actually drop, as if winter itself followed him. "Most of the women presented to me are performing. Simpering or seducing or both. You are doing neither." His eyes searched her face. "What do you actually want, Marin Varin?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. Not once in her entire life. "I want to survive," she said honestly. "Beyond that, I have not allowed myself to want anything. It seemed safer that way." Something shifted in his expression. Pain, perhaps. Recognition. "Then we are alike in that," he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Before she could respond, he turned away. The cold receded. The moment broke. "Sign the contract," he said, his voice formal again, distant again. "The bonding ceremony will be held in 3 months. Until then, you will want for nothing. But understand this clearly." He paused at the door, his hand on the ancient wood. "I will never love you. I cannot. It is not a choice. It is simply the truth. If you can accept that, we may find a way to coexist. If you cannot, I can accept it," Marin said. Because what other choice did she have? He nodded once and left her alone with the contract and the quill, and the dawning realization that the Alpha King of Valdris was not cold because he wanted to be. He was cold because something had frozen him. The 3 months passed in a blur of fittings and preparations and carefully choreographed public appearances. Marin learned to navigate the court, to recognize which nobles were dangerous and which were merely ambitious, to read the currents of power that swirled beneath the polite smiles. She saw the king at formal events, always at a distance, always with Ravenna close by. He never looked at her during these occasions, never acknowledged her beyond what protocol demanded. But sometimes, late at night, she would sense something. A presence outside her door, a hesitation, footsteps that approached and then retreated without knocking. She never mentioned it, neither did he. On the morning of the bonding ceremony, Marin woke to find a gift box on her vanity. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, elegant. A folded note beneath it read, "Wear this today. It will mark you as mine in the eyes of the realm." No signature, no sentiment, just instruction. She slipped the ring onto her finger and felt it settle like a promise, or a warning. The cathedral was filled to capacity by the time she arrived. 500 nobles, dignitaries from neighboring kingdoms, the high priest in his ceremonial robes, and at the altar, waiting for her. No one. The altar was empty. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marin stood frozen in the entrance, her white gown suddenly feeling like a shroud. Where was he? Had something happened? Had he changed his mind? Then the great doors behind the altar opened and Alpha King Caius walked in, with Ravenna on his arm. The mistress wore crimson. Of course she did. Her copper hair was piled high, adorned with rubies, and her smile was radiant as she clung to the king's arm like she belonged there, like she had every right. The crowd erupted in whispers, scandal, shock, delighted horror. Marin did not move. She watched them approach the altar together, watched Ravenna take a position just behind the king, watched Caius finally turn to look at her with those cold, empty eyes. He was testing her, or punishing her, or simply showing her exactly where she stood in the hierarchy of his heart. Last. Always last. After duty. After politics. After her. The high priest looked between them nervously. "Your Majesty, we are prepared to begin the bonding rite. If you would." Caius said nothing. He simply stood there, waiting, his mistress at his back, his chosen mate before him, and not a flicker of remorse in his expression. Marin felt something shift inside her. The terror she had carried for 3 months calcified into something else. Something harder. Something that refused to bend. She walked forward. The crowd fell silent. Ravenna's smile widened, anticipating tears, anticipating a breakdown that would humiliate the Varan girl once and for all. Marin stopped before the king. She looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face, memorizing this feeling. Then she reached for her ring. "She is yours," Marin said, placing the silver band in his palm. "And so is this." She turned and walked out of the cathedral, 500 gasps echoing behind her, and she did not look back. The doors slammed shut behind her, and Marin finally allowed herself to breathe. She had no home to return to, no allies, no resources. Her father would disown her the moment he learned what she had done. She had just publicly rejected the Alpha King of Valdris and humiliated him before the entire realm. She was free, and she was doomed. But at least she was no longer a thing to be traded. Marin made it halfway across the courtyard before she heard the footsteps behind her. Fast, purposeful, and radiating an alpha presence so overwhelming it stopped her in her tracks. "You do not get to leave." His voice was different now. Not cold. Not empty. There was something burning beneath the frost, something that made the air crackle with tension. Marin turned to face him. Alpha King Caius stood 3 paces away, the silver ring still clutched in his fist, his pale eyes blazing with an emotion she could not name. "I just did," she said. "The bond is not complete." He took a step closer. "You are still technically my chosen mate. Until the council formally dissolves the arrangement, you cannot leave the palace grounds. Then dissolve it." "No." The word hung between them, heavy and impossible. "Why?" Marin demanded. "You do not want me. You have made that abundantly clear. Let me go." "I cannot." His jaw tightened. "You do not understand. I cannot." There was something in his voice. Desperation, fear. Things that should not exist in the Alpha King of Valdris. Before Marin could respond, a wave of dizziness crashed over her. The world tilted. Colors bled together. She felt something ancient and vast stirring in her chest, something that had been sleeping for her entire life and was now, suddenly, catastrophically, waking up. "What?" she stumbled. "What is happening to me?" Caius caught her before she hit the ground. His arms were strong around her, and his skin was ice cold, and his eyes were wide with shock as he stared down at her. "Impossible," he breathed. "It cannot be." "What?" Marin gasped. "What is happening?" But he did not answer. He simply held her as the world went dark, and the last thing she heard was his voice, ragged and broken, saying a single word. "Mate." Marin woke in an unfamiliar room. The ceiling above her was painted with constellations, silver stars against deep blue, and for a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then the memories crashed back. The ceremony, the ring, walking out. And then, something else. Something that had torn through her like lightning. She sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it. Her head pounded. Her chest ached. And there was a strange warmth pulsing beneath her skin, like embers that had been dormant her entire life and were now struggling to catch flame. "You should not move yet." His voice came from the shadows near the window. Marin's eyes adjusted, and she found him there. The Alpha King sat in a chair that looked far too small for his frame, his elbows on his knees, his head bowed. He looked exhausted. More than that, he looked haunted. "What happened to me?" Marin asked. Her voice came out hoarse, unfamiliar. Caius did not answer immediately. When he finally lifted his head, his pale eyes were filled with something she had never seen there before. Uncertainty. Fear. "How much do you know about true mate bonds?" he asked. "The basics. They are rare, fated, unbreakable once formed." Marin paused. "Most people go their entire lives without finding theirs." "Most people do." He rose from the chair, and even in her weakened state, Marin felt the weight of his presence fill the room. "I was told mine did not exist, that whatever part of me was meant to recognize a true mate had been damaged, destroyed." He laughed bitterly. "I believed it. For 20 years I believed it. 20 years. Marin did the calculation quickly. He would have been barely more than a child when he received that verdict. "What changed?" she asked. "You." He said the word like it cost him something. "When you put that ring in my hand and walked away, something happened. Something I have spent my entire life being told was impossible." He met her eyes. "The bond woke. After 2 decades of silence, it woke. And it chose you." Marin's throat tightened. A true mate bond. With the Alpha King. The man who had humiliated her before the entire realm, who kept a mistress openly, who had told her plainly that he would never love her. "That is why you stopped me in the courtyard," she said slowly. "Not because of politics or protocol, because you felt it." "I felt it," he confirmed. "And so did you, whether you recognized it or not. That is why you collapsed. The bond was trying to complete itself, but your body was not prepared. You have been unconscious for 2 days." 2 days. Marin looked down at herself and realized she was wearing different clothes, soft linen. Someone had changed her, cared for her. "Ravenna," she said suddenly. "Does she know?" Something dark passed across his face. "Ravenna knows nothing. No one does except my personal physician, and he has been sworn to silence." He paused. "This cannot become public knowledge. Not yet. Not until I understand what is happening." "What do you mean, what is happening? You just explained it." "We are true mates. The bond has formed. Is that not the end of it?" "No." He moved closer, and Marin felt that strange warmth in her chest intensify. The nearer he came, the stronger it grew. A true mate bond should bring balance, harmony, warmth. His jaw tightened. "But I am not capable of warmth. I have not been for 20 years. And if the bond tries to complete itself with a vessel as broken as I am..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. "It could kill one of us," Marin said quietly. "It could kill both of us." Silence fell between them, heavy with implications. Marin should have been terrified. She should have demanded to be released, to be sent away, to escape this palace and this man and this impossible situation. Instead, she asked, "Why are you broken?" He flinched. Actually flinched, as if she had struck him. "That is not your concern." "It is absolutely my concern." Marin pushed herself upright despite the dizziness. "If I am bound to you, if my life is now tied to whatever is wrong with you, I have a right to know." "You have no rights here." His voice dropped to a growl. "You gave them up when you threw that ring in my face." "I gave up the contract. I did not give up my dignity." She met his glare without flinching. "Tell me, Caius, tell me what happened to you 20 years ago that convinced you no one could ever be your mate." He stared at her for a long moment. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen. The temperature dropped, and Marin saw her breath mist in the air between them. "Not tonight," he said finally. "You are still recovering. We will speak again when you are stronger." "When I am stronger, or when you are ready to stop hiding?" His expression shuddered completely. The cold intensified until Marin was shivering despite the blankets. "Rest," he commanded. "I will send food and medicine. Do not attempt to leave this room." He was almost to the door when she spoke again. "Thank you." He stopped, did not turn. "For what?" "For catching me. In the courtyard. You could have let me fall." A pause. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "I will always catch you. That is what the bond demands." "Is that the only reason?" He did not answer. The door closed behind him, and Marin was left alone with the painted stars and the warmth still pulsing in her chest, and the growing certainty that Alpha King Caius of Valdris was not a villain. He was a prisoner, just like her. The days that followed were strange. Marin was moved to new chambers, larger and more secure than her previous rooms, with guards posted at every entrance. Officially, she was recovering from a fainting spell brought on by the stress of the ceremony. Unofficially, she was being hidden. But hidden from whom? Caius visited each evening after the court had retired. He never stayed long, never touched her. But he came, and they talked, and slowly, piece by piece, Marin began to understand the man behind the crown. He was lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely, though he would never admit it. He had been groomed for kingship since birth, trained to suppress emotion, taught that vulnerability was weakness. His father had died when he was 12, leaving him to rule a kingdom while still a child himself. The council had controlled him for years, making decisions in his name, and by the time he was old enough to assert himself, he had forgotten how to feel anything at all. One night, as a fire burned low between them, he finally told her the truth. When I was 12 years old, my father arranged a strategic marriage for me, a princess from a neighboring kingdom. His voice was distant, as if reciting something memorized long ago. 2 weeks before the wedding, I met someone else, a servant girl in the palace. She was kind to me, the first person who had ever been kind without expecting something in return. I thought I loved her. Marin listened in silence, sensing that interrupting would break something fragile. My father discovered us together, not doing anything improper, just talking. But it was enough. He was furious that I would jeopardize a political alliance for a servant. Caius's voice hardened. He called in a witch, one who specialized in emotional modification, and he ordered her to remove my capacity for love entirely. The words hit Marin like a physical blow. He did what? The spell was not supposed to be permanent, just strong enough to get me through the marriage, to prevent me from forming attachments that could interfere with duty. Caius turned to face her, and his expression was bleak. But something went wrong. The witch made a mistake, or perhaps my father demanded something stronger than she could safely provide. Either way, the spell did not just suppress my emotions. It froze them. Froze me. He spread his hands. This cold you feel? It is not a natural condition. It is the spell, still working after 20 years. Still freezing everything inside me that tries to feel. Marin rose to her feet. That is why you told me you could never love me. Not because you chose not to, but because you were cursed. Not cursed. Broken. He laughed bitterly. Curses can be broken. This cannot. The witch who cast the spell died years ago. She left no notes, no instructions, no way to undo what was done. I have searched. I have hired dozens of other witches to examine me. They all say the same thing. The spell is too deeply rooted. Removing it would kill me. And the bond? Marin asked. If completing a true mate bond could kill us both, is that why? Because the bond is trying to reach emotions that are frozen? Yes. He met her eyes. The bond demands completion. It demands love. And every time it reaches for what should be there and finds only ice, it strains harder. Eventually, it will tear us both apart trying to connect to something that no longer exists. Marin crossed the room to stand before him. He watched her approach with something like terror in his eyes. You assume your capacity for love no longer exists? She said quietly. But I have seen you these past days. I have watched you soften. I have felt your hands warm when they brush against mine. Something is still alive in there, Caius. Something the spell did not completely destroy. That is the bond talking. It makes you see things that are not there. Does it? Or does it simply reveal what you have spent 20 years denying? She reached for him, and this time he did not pull away. Her palms pressed against his chest, against the ice that seemed to emanate from his very heart, and she pushed warmth into him with everything she had. He shuddered. His hands came up to cover hers, holding them in place. If you are wrong, he said hoarsely, this will kill you. And if I am right, it might save us both. She met his gaze. I am willing to take that risk. Are you? He stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. Then, slowly, carefully, as if she were made of glass, he leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. The cold shattered. Marin gasped as heat flooded through her, not painful but overwhelming, like stepping into a summer sun after a lifetime of winter. She felt the bond surge between them, felt it lock into place with an almost audible click, and she felt something else too. His emotions, his actual emotions, freed for just a moment from their icy prison. Loneliness so vast it was like an ocean. Grief for a childhood stolen. Shame for every cold word, every distant look, every time he had pushed someone away because feeling was too dangerous. And beneath it all, fragile and terrified and desperately alive, hope. He felt it too. She saw it in his eyes, saw the wonder and the terror fighting for dominance. "Marin," he whispered, "what have you done?" Before she could answer, the door burst open. Ravenna stood in the doorway, her amber eyes blazing, her crimson gown billowing around her like flames. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "isn't this cozy?" Kaya stepped in front of Marin immediately, instinctively, his body a shield between her and the fury in the doorway. The cold rushed back into him so quickly that frost actually formed on his clothing. "Ravenna." His voice was controlled, but Marin could feel the tension radiating through the bond. "You should not be here." "I should not be here?" Ravenna laughed, high and brittle. "I have spent 3 years in this palace. 3 years warming your bed, managing your court, playing the role of queen in everything but name. And now I discover that you have been hiding her? Meeting with her in secret while telling me she was too ill for visitors? This is not what it appears. Is it not?" Ravenna's amber eyes found Marin over his shoulder. "I warned you, little Varin. I warned you what would happen if you tried to take more than what I offered. And now here you are, hands on what is mine, eyes full of feelings you have no right to possess." "Ravenna." Caius's voice hardened. "That is enough." "Enough?" She stalked closer, and Marin saw something she had not noticed before. Ravenna was pale, too pale. Her hands were trembling, and there were dark circles under her eyes that cosmetics could not quite conceal. Something was wrong with her. Something beyond simple jealousy. "You do not get to tell me what enough is. Not after everything I have sacrificed for you, everything I have done." "What have you done?" Marin asked quietly. Ravenna's gaze snapped to her. "You think you are special because he visits you? Because he holds your hand like a love-struck boy?" She smiled, and it was cruel and broken. "I was special once, too, before I realized the truth." "What truth?" "That he cannot love anyone. Not me. Not you. Not even himself." Ravenna's voice cracked. "I thought I could fix him. I thought if I loved him enough, gave him enough, sacrificed enough, eventually the ice would melt. But it never did. It never will." She laughed bitterly. "So I found another way." Caius went very still. "What do you mean, another way?" Ravenna reached into her bodice and withdrew a small vial filled with dark liquid. Marin did not recognize it, but Caius clearly did. His face went white. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. "Does it matter?" Ravenna held the vial up to the candlelight, watching the liquid swirl. "Essence of binding, brewed by a witch from the eastern provinces. Very rare, very expensive, and very effective at creating artificial emotional attachments." The implications crashed over Marin like a wave. "You have been drugging him. I have been saving him." Ravenna's eyes blazed. "Do you know what it is like to love someone who cannot love you back? To give everything and receive nothing? The essence does not create love, but it creates dependence, need. He comes back to me because his body craves what I have conditioned it to crave, and that has been enough. Until you." Caius had not moved, had not spoken. Marin felt the chaos of his emotions through the bond. Rage, betrayal, and beneath it all, a terrible understanding. "How long?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. 2 years." Ravenna did not flinch. "Since the first time you tried to end things between us, you said you did not feel anything for me, that you could not. So I made sure you would feel something, even if it was artificial." even if it was just chemical need masquerading as affection. You poisoned me. I kept you. Ravenna's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I kept you when no one else could. I kept you warm when everything inside you was frozen. And this is the thanks I receive? You replace me with some debt-ridden noble girl who cannot even afford a decent gown? Ravenna. Kaya stepped toward her, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Ice crystals formed on the windows. Frost spread across the floor. Give me the vial. Why? So you can destroy the only thing that binds us together? She backed away, clutching the vial to her chest. I will not let her take you from me. I cannot. She is not taking me. You never had me. His voice was cold enough to match his skin. What you had was a puppet, a dependency you manufactured through poison. That is not love, Ravenna. That is ownership. And what she offers is better? Ravenna gestured wildly at Marin. A true mate bond with a frozen heart? That will kill you both within the year. At least my way keeps you alive. Your way keeps me a prisoner. He extended his hand. The vial. Now. For a long moment, no one moved. Ravenna's eyes darted between them, wild and desperate. Marin could see the calculations happening behind those amber eyes, the realization that she had lost, the refusal to accept it. Then Ravenna did something none of them expected. She drank it, the entire vial, down in one desperate swallow. No. Caius lunged for her, but it was too late. Ravenna collapsed to her knees, the empty vial shattering on the floor, her body convulsing as the concentrated essence flooded her system. If I cannot have you, she gasped, her voice already fading, then I will make sure you never forget me. Every time you look at her, you will remember what you did to me, what you made me become. Then her eyes rolled back, and she fell. Marin rushed forward, but Caius was already there, checking for a pulse, barking orders at the guards who had finally arrived at the commotion. Get the physician, now, and clear this corridor. No one speaks of what happened here. The chaos that followed was a blur. Ravenna was carried away, her face ashen, her breathing shallow. Servants scrubbed the frost from the floor. Advisors whispered in corners. And through it all, Caius stood in the center of the room, staring at the shattered vial like it held the answers to questions he could not bring himself to ask. Marin approached him carefully. The physician says she will survive. The essence is working through her system, but she is strong. In a few days, she should recover. 2 years. His voice was hollow. She has been poisoning me for 2 years, and I never knew. I thought the cravings were genuine. I thought some part of me actually wanted her. You could not have known. I should have. His hands clenched into fists. I am the Alpha King. I am supposed to be vigilant, protected. And instead I let a snake into my bed because I was so desperate for any feeling at all that I mistook poison for affection. Marin reached for him, but he stepped back. Do not. His voice cracked. Not right now. I cannot. I need time to process this, to understand what is real and what was manufactured. Caius, the bond between us is not manufactured. You know that. Do I? He met her eyes and she saw the doubt there, the fear. How can I trust anything I feel when my own perceptions have been compromised for years? How do I know this warmth I feel with you is genuine and not just another manipulation I do not understand? It was a fair question, a devastating question, and Marin did not have an answer. I will go, she said quietly. Take the time you need. But know this, Caius. Whatever Ravenna did to you, whatever poisons she used, they did not create the bond. They could not. True mate bonds cannot be manufactured. They are fate, destiny, something beyond manipulation. She paused at the door. When you are ready to believe that, I will be here. She left him alone with his shattered certainties and his frozen heart, and the dawning realization that everything he thought he knew about the past 2 years was a lie. That night, Maren did not sleep. She sat by her window, watching the stars, feeling the bond pulse weakly in her chest. He was blocking her, putting up walls. She could feel the ice forming between them, thicker than ever. And she did not know if she had the strength to break through it again. Near dawn, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find a servant with frightened eyes. "Lady Maren," the girl whispered, "you must come quickly. The king has collapsed. The physicians cannot wake him." The world tilted. Maren was running before she consciously decided to move, flying through corridors, past startled guards, following the servant's urgent directions. She found him in his chambers, surrounded by physicians and advisors, lying motionless on his bed. His skin was not just cold now, it was blue. Ice crystals covered his eyelashes. Frost coated his lips. "What happened?" Maren demanded. "We do not know, my lady." The chief physician wrung his hands. "He dismissed everyone several hours ago. When we came to check on him this morning, he was like this. His temperature is dropping rapidly. If we cannot warm him." He did not finish. He did not need to. Maren pushed through the crowd and climbed onto the bed beside him. She pressed her palms to his chest, to the place where his frozen heart struggled to beat. "Everyone out," she commanded. "My lady, we cannot leave the king unattended in this condition." "I set out." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Something in her tone, something ancient and powerful that she did not fully understand, made every person in the room obey without further argument. The door closed. They were alone. "Caius." Maren leaned close, pouring every ounce of warmth she possessed into her touch. "Listen to me. I know you are afraid. I know you do not trust what you feel. But this is real. We are real. And I am not going to let you freeze to death because some witch broke you 20 years ago and some woman poisoned you for 2. No response. The ice continued to spread. "You told me you were curious about me," she continued, her voice breaking. "That I was the first thing you had been curious about in years. Well, I am curious about you too. I want to know what you are like when you are warm, when you laugh, when you feel joy without wondering if it is manufactured." Tears spilled down her cheeks, landing on his frozen skin. "I want the chance to love you properly, Caius. Please, do not leave before we get that chance." Still nothing. His heartbeat was slowing. She could feel it through the bond, feel him slipping away. And then, deep inside her, something ignited. It was not just warmth, it was fire. Pure, burning, impossible fire, rising up from some hidden place she had never known existed. It poured through her hands into his chest, and Maren watched in shock as the ice began to recede. His eyes flew open. "Maren!" His voice was a ragged gasp. "What are you?" "I do not know." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "I do not know, but you are alive. You are alive." He reached for her face with hands that were still cold but warming, and he pulled her down, and his lips found hers in a kiss that tasted like winter breaking into spring. The bond completed. She felt it snap into place, felt his emotions flood into her and hers into him, and for one perfect moment, there was no ice, no fear, no 20 years of frozen isolation. There was only warmth, only them. Then his eyes widened with horror. "Maren," he breathed, "your hands." She looked down. Her palms were glowing, actually glowing, emitting golden light that pulsed with each heartbeat. And on her wrists, spiraling up her forearms, marks were appearing. Ancient symbols she did not recognize, burning themselves into her skin. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. But before he could answer, before either of them could process what they were seeing, the door burst open. Her father stood in the entrance, flanked by royal guards, a triumphant smile on his bloated face. "Well, well," Lord Aldrich Varen said. "I always knew you were hiding something, daughter. But this?" He laughed. "This changes everything." Marin instinctively moved to shield Caius, but he was already rising from the bed, placing himself between her and the men in the doorway. The cold radiated from him again, but it was different now. Controlled. Weaponized. "Lord Aldrich." His voice could have frozen fire. "You are intruding on the king's private chambers. Explain yourself before I have you executed where you stand." Her father did not flinch. If anything, his smile widened. "My apologies, Your Majesty. But when I received word that my daughter had somehow wormed her way back into your presence, I knew I had to act quickly." His eyes found Marin, and she saw something there she had never seen before. Not just greed, hunger. "I had suspected for years, of course. Her mother tried to hide it, but certain signs are unmistakable. And now, seeing those marks..." He laughed. "You have no idea what she is, do you?" "Father." Marin's voice shook. "What are you talking about? Still pretending innocence? How charming." Lord Aldrich stepped further into the room, ignoring the king's warning growl. "Your Majesty, I must inform you that the woman you have bonded yourself to is not merely a disgraced noble. She is something far more valuable, and far more dangerous." "Speak plainly," Caius commanded, "or do not speak at all." "Very well." Her father's eyes glittered. "Marin is a sunborn, a carrier of the ancient flame, the last of a bloodline that was supposed to have died out 3 centuries ago." The words meant nothing to Marin, but she saw Caius stiffen, saw the blood drain from his face. "That is impossible," he said. "The sunborn were exterminated during the Purging Wars. Every history book confirms it." "Every history book was written by those who wanted the sunborn forgotten." Lord Aldrich moved to the window, gazing out at the dawn light as if he had all the time in the world. "But bloodlines are stubborn things. They hide, they dilute, they wait." He turned back to face them. Marin's mother was the last pure descendant of House Solarius, the ruling family of the Sunborn. She hid her heritage, married beneath her station, and prayed the power would skip her daughter entirely. His lip curled. It did not. Marin stared at her hands, at the golden mark still pulsing on her skin. "I do not understand. What does this mean? What am I?" "You are a weapon." Her father's voice was cold. "The Sunborn were not merely witches or healers. They were living conduits of solar fire. They could burn through any magic, break any curse, and melt any ice." His eyes flicked to Caius, including, I imagine, the spell that has kept our dear king frozen for 20 years. Understanding crashed over Marin like a wave, the warmth she had always felt inside her, the way she could touch Caius without being harmed by his cold. The fire that had erupted from her hands when he was dying. She was not just his true mate. She was his cure. "You knew." Marin's voice was barely a whisper. "All this time, you knew what I was. That is why you kept trying to sell me. Not because of the debts. Because you were looking for the highest bidder." Finally, she understands. Her father applauded mockingly. "Yes, daughter. Your mother made me swear to protect your secret to let you live a normal life. But normal lives do not pay debts. Normal lives do not restore fallen houses to glory." He spread his hands. "When I learned the king was seeking a mate, I knew immediately. A sunborn bonded to the frozen king? The power that union would create? Kingdoms would kneel to possess it." "You planned this," Caius said slowly. "The arrangement. The contract. You knew about my condition, and you knew she could affect it." "I suspected. I hoped." Lord Aldrich shrugged. "The bond forming was an unexpected bonus. It means she cannot leave you now, cannot escape, cannot refuse to use her power when I command it." "When you command it?" Marin laughed bitterly. "I am done obeying your commands, father. I am done being your currency. Are you? His smile turned cruel. Then perhaps you should know the rest. Your mother did not die of illness when you were 6, Marin. I killed her. The world stopped. She was going to take you away. Run to some distant land where I could never find you. Never profit from what you are. I could not allow that. He said it so casually, so matter-of-factly. The poison was quick. She did not suffer much. And with her gone, your secret was safe with me. Marin could not breathe, could not think. Her mother, her gentle, loving mother who had sung her to sleep and braided her hair and promised that everything would be all right, murdered by the man who was supposed to protect them both. You monster. The words came out broken. You absolute monster. I am a pragmatist. Lord Aldrich produced a small device from his coat, something metallic and covered in runes. And as a pragmatist, I have prepared for the possibility that you might not cooperate willingly. This device was created by the same witch who spelled our dear king all those years ago. She did leave notes after all, despite what everyone believed. Notes that I acquired at great expense. Caius moved faster than Marin had ever seen anyone move, but he was still weak from his collapse, and her father was prepared. 2 guards stepped forward with weapons drawn, and the device in Lord Aldrich's hand began to glow with sickly green light. Caius froze mid-stride, literally froze, his body locking in place, ice spreading rapidly across his skin faster than before. The original spell, Lord Aldrich explained calmly, was designed to suppress emotion. This device amplifies it, accelerates it. In approximately 5 minutes, the king's heart will be so frozen that not even a sunborn's fire could thaw it. No. Marin lunged toward Caius, but her father caught her arm, his grip bruising. You will do exactly as I say, he hissed. Or you will watch him die, and then I will find other uses for your power, less pleasant ones. Lady Marin. A new voice, soft, feminine, familiar. Marin turned to see Ravenna standing in the doorway, pale and trembling but very much alive. The physicians had managed to stabilize her, though she looked like she might collapse again at any moment. And beside her, supporting her weight, was a face Marin had not seen in 3 years. Celia, her half-sister. The girl who had been raised alongside Marin, who had been sent away to a distant academy the moment she started asking questions about their family's secrets. Celia, Marin breathed. Hello, sister. Celia's eyes were hard as flint. I see father is up to his old tricks. Lord Aldrich's composure cracked for the first time. You! How are you here? I sent you to the northern provinces. You were supposed to stay hidden. Hidden? Yes. That was your plan, was it not? Celia released Ravenna and stepped forward, and Marin noticed for the first time that her half-sister was holding something. A book, ancient and leather-bound and covered in symbols that matched the marks on Marin's arms. You sent me away because I started asking questions about Mother, about Marin, about why our house had secret rooms filled with documents about extinct bloodlines. Celia, you do not understand what you are meddling with. I understand perfectly. Celia opened the book, and golden light spilled from its pages. This is the Codex Solarius, the sacred text of the Sunborn. It contains every ritual, every spell, every piece of knowledge that their order preserved, including... She flipped to a marked page. The method for breaking any ice magic, no matter how deeply rooted. Lord Aldrich lunged for the book, but Ravenna stepped into his path. I do not think so, the former mistress said quietly. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were steady. You used me just as surely as you used your daughter. You fed information to me for months, encouraged me to dose the king with essence, all so he would be weak enough for your plans to work. Her amber eyes blazed with something like redemption. I may have made terrible choices, but I will not let you destroy him completely. Marin. Celia held out the book. This has to be you. The ritual requires sunborn blood. I cannot perform it. Marin looked at the book, at her sister, at Ravenna, at Caius frozen in place with ice creeping toward his heart. She had perhaps 3 minutes, maybe less. Tell me what to do. The ritual was written in a language Marin had never seen, yet somehow understood. The words rose to her lips like a song she had always known, but never sung. Celia guided her through the positioning, the breathing, the focus required to channel power she had never been trained to use. Place your hands on the book first, Celia instructed. Let it recognize your blood, your lineage. Marin pressed her palms to the ancient pages, and knowledge flooded into her like sunlight breaking through clouds. 3 centuries of accumulated wisdom, healing techniques, protective wards, and at the center of it all, burning brightest, the method for shattering ice magic. Now, Celia said, turn to him. Lord Aldrich tried to intervene, but Ravenna held him back with surprising strength for someone who had nearly died hours ago. The guards, confused and uncertain whose orders to follow, did nothing. Marin faced Caius. He was nearly completely frozen now, only his eyes still moving, fixed on her with a mixture of terror and hope. She could feel him through the bond, feel him fighting, feel him trying to hold on for her. The marks on her arms blazed brilliant gold. The fire in her chest roared to life, not wild and uncontrolled like before, but focused, purposeful, ancient. I see you, she said, and her voice resonated with power that was older than kingdoms. I see the spell that binds you. I see the ice that freezes your heart. I see 20 years of stolen feeling and suppressed love and enforced solitude. She pressed her burning palms to his frozen chest. And I burn it all away. The explosion of light was visible from every corner of the palace, from every corner of the city. Some said later that they saw the sun rise twice that morning, once in the east and once from the windows of the king's chambers. The device in Lord Aldrich's hand melted to slag. The guards stumbled backward, blinded. Ravenna fell to her knees, shielding her eyes. Celia laughed in triumph, and at the center of it all, Marin poured 20 years of stolen warmth back into the man she loved. She felt the spell shatter, felt the ice that had encased his heart for 2 decades finally, completely break apart, felt emotions flood back into him, overwhelming and beautiful and terrifying all at once. When the light faded, Marin collapsed, but Caius caught her. His hands were warm, actually warm for the first time in 20 years, and his eyes, when she looked up into them, were not gray anymore. They were silver, bright and alive, and filled with something she had never seen there before. Love. Real love. Unmanufactured and unbound and burning as brightly as her own fire. You saved me, he whispered. We saved each other. She smiled weakly, though I would appreciate it if the world would stop spinning. He laughed. Actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse but genuine and warm and perfect. And then his eyes moved past her, and his expression hardened. Lord Aldrich was trying to crawl toward the door, his hands burned, his schemes in ashes around him. Guards! Caius called, his voice ringing with authority. Take Lord Aldrich Varen into custody. The charges are murder, conspiracy against the crown, use of forbidden magic, and treason. You cannot prove any of this, her father snarled. I can. Celia stepped forward, the codex still in her hands. I have spent 3 years gathering evidence, letters, financial records, witness testimonies. Everything you did to Mother, everything you planned for Marin. It is all documented. For the first time, Lord Aldrich looked afraid. And I will testify as well, Ravenna added quietly. to everything I know about his manipulation of the court and his plans for the king. Lord Aldrich was dragged away, screaming threats and promises that no one believed anymore. Marin watched him go, waiting to feel something. Grief, perhaps, or anger, or satisfaction. Instead, she felt only relief. It was over. The man who had haunted her entire life, who had killed her mother and sold her like property and schemed to control her power, was finally going to face justice. Sister. Celia knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face. I am so sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have found a way to warn you. You came when it mattered. Marin reached for her hand. That is enough. The days following the confrontation passed in a blur of activity. The palace, which had been frozen in more ways than one for 20 years, seemed to shake itself awake. Servants moved faster, courtiers spoke louder, and everywhere Marin went, she felt eyes upon her, curious and awed, and just slightly afraid. The queen who broke the king's curse. That was what they were calling her, the sunborn who melted the ice. She did not feel like a queen. She felt exhausted, overwhelmed, and desperately in need of a quiet room where no one would ask her questions she did not know how to answer. But there was no time for quiet. There were councils to attend, testimonies to give, a kingdom to reassure that its ruler was no longer frozen and its future was secure. Caius was different now. That was the first thing everyone noticed. The cold that had surrounded him for 2 decades had vanished entirely, replaced by a warmth that was almost startling in its intensity. He smiled now, laughed, touched people's shoulders when he spoke to them instead of maintaining careful distance. Some of the older courtiers seemed unsettled by the change. They had built their entire careers around predicting the responses of a frozen king, and now they no longer knew the rules of the game. Good, Marin thought. Let them be unsettled. Let everything change. Ravenna was recovering in the eastern wing, under the care of physicians and watched by guards who were half escort and half jailers. Her fate remained undecided. She had committed crimes, yes, but she had also helped save the king in the end. Marin found herself unsure what to hope for. A week after the confrontation, Ravenna requested an audience. Marin went alone, despite Caius's protests. This was something she needed to do herself. She found Ravenna sitting by a window, looking out at the gardens. The former mistress was thinner than before, her copper hair lank and dull, her amber eyes shadowed with exhaustion. You came, Ravenna said without turning around. You asked to see me. I wanted to apologize. Ravenna finally looked at her, and Marin saw something she had not expected, genuine remorse. Not because I want forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But because you should hear the words. Marin sat down across from her. I am listening. I loved him. Ravenna's voice was quiet. That part was real. From the very beginning, before the essence, before the schemes, I genuinely loved him. But I loved a version of him that did not exist. I loved the idea of being the one who could thaw him, who could be special enough to break through the ice. She laughed bitterly. When I realized I could not, when I understood that no amount of love would ever be enough to warm someone who had been spelled to be cold, I broke. And I did terrible things trying to fill the emptiness. The essence. Yes, it was wrong. I knew it was wrong even as I did it. But I was so desperate to feel needed, to feel like I mattered to someone, that I convinced myself it was acceptable. That it was even kind, in a way, to give him something that felt like attachment, even if it was artificial. Ravenna shook her head. I was a fool, and I nearly destroyed him. You nearly destroyed yourself. That too. Ravenna met her eyes. I am going away. When the physicians clear me to travel, I will leave Valdris. There is a sanctuary in the southern islands for those who have been damaged by magic. I will go there. Try to heal. Try to become someone who does not need to possess another person in order to feel whole. Marin considered her for a long moment. I hope you find what you are looking for. Do you? Ravenna seemed surprised. I do not forgive what you did. I am not sure I ever will. But I understand desperation. I understand doing terrible things because you feel like you have no other choice. Marin rose to leave. I hope you find peace, Ravenna. I truly do. She was almost to the door when Ravenna spoke again. He loves you. You know that. Do you not? Marin paused. I know. Not because of the bond. Not because you healed him. He loves you because you are the first person who ever saw him clearly and did not flinch. Ravenna's voice was soft. I was never brave enough to do that. I only saw what I wanted to see. Marin left without responding, but she carried the words with her. That evening, Caius found her in the garden, sitting beside a fountain that had apparently not functioned in 20 years but was now bubbling merrily as if it had never stopped. The staff tells me everything is turning back on, he said, settling onto the bench beside her. Fireplaces that have not lit in decades. Fountains that have been dry since my father's time. It is as if the entire palace was frozen along with me, and now it is all waking up. That is probably exactly what happened. The Codex mentions sympathetic freezing. When a sunborn's opposite suffers under ice magic, the environment around them slowly crystallizes as well. You have been studying. Celia is an excellent teacher. Marin leaned against his shoulder, savoring the warmth of him. She says I have decades of training to catch up on. Apparently, sunborn children begin their education at age 3. You are a quick learner. I have seen evidence of that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The council has recommended a coronation, Caius said finally. A proper one this time, to formally install you as queen. Marin's heart stuttered. Already? They are eager to legitimize the bond, to show the kingdom that the curse is truly broken and the succession is secure. He paused. There is also the matter of your father's trial. As queen, you would have the authority to influence the sentencing. I do not want to influence the sentencing. I want him to face justice, real justice, not vengeance dressed in legal robes. That is exactly why you should be queen. Caius turned to face her, taking her hands in his. Marin, I know this is not what you imagined for your life. I know you came to this palace expecting to be a prisoner, not a ruler. But I have watched you these past weeks. I have seen how you handle the courtiers, how you speak to the servants, how you navigate the politics without losing yourself. You were born for this. I was born to be a weapon. Apparently? No. His voice was fierce. You were born to be a healer, a protector, a queen who actually cares about her people instead of just ruling over them. He squeezed her hands. I am not asking you to do this alone. I will be beside you every step of the way. But I need you to believe that you can do this. That you want to do this. Marin looked at him. At this man who had been frozen for 2 decades and was now blazing with life, and she felt something settle into place inside her. Yes, she said. I want to do this. With you. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Marin had one more question. The physician said something today. About the bond affecting more than just us. Caius's expression softened. You mean the baby? Marin nodded, her hand moving unconsciously to her stomach. The physicians had confirmed it that morning. She was pregnant, barely a month along, but the sunborn blood in her veins made such things detectable earlier than normal. Are you happy? She asked quietly. I know this is fast. We have barely had time to adjust to the bond, and now. I am terrified, Caius admitted. I have no idea how to be a father. My own father was cold and distant even before the spell, and I have spent 20 years being incapable of feeling anything at all. He paused. But I am also happier than I have ever been in my life. A child. Our child. A future I never allowed myself to imagine. Our child will have sunborn blood, Marin said. According to the Codex, that means they will need training. Special care. There may be challenges we cannot predict. Then we will face them together. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her protectively. Whatever comes, Marin. Whatever challenges or dangers or surprises this life throws at us, we will face them together. She believed him. For the first time in her life, she believed that she was not alone. 6 months later, the kingdom of Valdris was unrecognizable. The first change had been the weather. For 20 years, a strange chill had hung over the capital, a cold that never quite lifted, that made summers feel like autumn and winters feel like death. Within a week of the king's healing, the chill vanished. Flowers bloomed out of season. Children played in streets that had always been too cold for lingering. The people called it the thawing. And they knew exactly who to thank. Queen Marin Celerius Valdris stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the sun set over her kingdom. Her kingdom. Sometimes she still could not believe it was real. The coronation had been beautiful. Nothing like the disaster of the first ceremony. This time, when Caius placed the crown on her head, the cathedral had erupted not in scandalized whispers but in genuine cheers. This time, when he kissed her, it was on the lips, tender and true, and the crowd had roared its approval. This time, Ravenna had not been present. She had left for the southern sanctuary a month before, with a letter of safe passage signed by the king himself, and a small fortune to fund her recovery. Marin did not know if she would ever see the former mistress again. She found she did not mind either way. "You are brooding again." She smiled as warm arms wrapped around her from behind as Caius pressed a kiss to her temple. His hands settled on the swell of her belly, protective and tender. "I am not brooding, I am reflecting. There is a difference." "Is there?" He turned her to face him, and she marveled, as she did every day, at the warmth in his eyes. At the easy smile that had replaced his permanent frown. At the man he was becoming now that 20 years of ice had melted away. "Tell me what you are reflecting on, then." "Everything." She leaned into his embrace. 6 months ago, I was a debt to be traded. Now I am queen. 6 months ago, you could not feel anything. Now you feel everything. She paused. Sometimes I worry it is all a dream, that I will wake up back in my father's house, with nothing. It is not a dream? He cupped her face in his hands that were warm and gentle and had learned to touch her with tenderness instead of cold distance. And even if it were, I would find you. In every dream, in every life, in every possible world, the bond would lead me to you. You have become quite romantic for a man who spent 2 decades frozen. I have 20 years of unexpressed feeling to make up for. You will simply have to endure my romance. She laughed and kissed him, and the kiss deepened, and they might have retreated inside to the bed that they now shared every night if a knock had not interrupted them. "Your Majesties." The servant's voice was apologetic through the door. "The council is assembled, and your guests have arrived." Marin sighed. "Duty calls." "Duty can wait 5 more minutes." Caius. 10 more minutes. She pushed him away gently. "Later. I promise." The council chamber had been transformed along with the rest of the palace. Gone were the heavy dark drapes and the oppressive chill. Now sunlight streamed through tall windows, and the table was surrounded by faces that ranged from cautiously optimistic to genuinely hopeful. Celia sat at Marin's right hand, her position as royal advisor now official. She had spent the past months helping Marin understand her sunborn heritage, training her to control the fire that now burned steadily in her veins, and working to restore knowledge that had been lost during the purging wars. The sunborn, Marin had learned, were never meant to be weapons. They were healers, peacekeepers. Their fire was meant to burn away corruption and warm the frozen-hearted. Her ancestors had been beloved, not feared, until jealous rulers had twisted history to justify their extermination. Now, for the first time in 3 centuries, a sunborn sat on a throne, and Marin was determined to honor her heritage properly. The matter before us today, the chief advisor announced, is the formal petition from the Academy of Magical Arts, requesting the establishment of a royal sanctuary for practitioners of healing magic. Marin smiled. This had been her project for months. The old laws against witchcraft, put in place by Caius's fearful ancestors, had created a kingdom where magical gifts were suppressed, hidden, treated as shameful secrets. The same laws that had allowed Lord Aldrich to bind a witch's services for his schemes. The same traditions that had led to Caius being expelled in the first place. No more. The Crown supports this petition, Caius announced. Queen Marin will oversee the sanctuary's establishment personally. There were murmurs of approval around the table. Not everyone was happy about the changes, of course. Some of the older nobles still clung to the belief that magic was dangerous, that it should be controlled rather than cultivated. But they were outnumbered now by those who had seen what healing looked like, what warmth looked like, what a kingdom could become when it stopped being afraid. After the council session, Marin made her way to the nursery that had been prepared in the sunniest corner of the royal wing. The baby was due in 3 months, but she liked to visit the space anyway, to imagine what it would be like to hold her child, to watch them grow, to raise them in a world so different from the one she had known. Someone is eager to see this room, Celia said, appearing at her elbow. I want it to be perfect. It will be. Celia squeezed her hand. And so will the child. The Codex says that sunborn children born to bonded parents are especially gifted. They carry the warmth of 2 souls instead of 1. That sounds like a lot of pressure for a baby who has not even been born yet. It sounds like a lot of love. Celia smiled. Speaking of which, I have news. Father's trial concluded this morning. Marin's heart clenched. And guilty on all counts: murder, conspiracy, treason, use of forbidden magic. Celia's voice was steady, but Marin could see the pain beneath it. However terrible Lord Aldrich had been, he was still their father. The sentence is life imprisonment. He will never leave his cell again. Marin closed her eyes, breathing through the complicated tangle of emotions: relief, grief, anger. And beneath it all, a strange, sad kind of peace. It is over then. It is over. Celia embraced her. We are free of him, sister. Finally and completely free. That night, after the court had retired, after the servants had been dismissed, Caius led Marin to the highest tower of the palace. The same tower where, centuries ago, sunborn rulers had performed their most sacred rituals. Celia had restored it over the past months. The ancient symbols carved into the stones now glowed softly with golden light. The altar at the center, long cold and forgotten, now burned with a perpetual flame that Marin had ignited herself. I wanted to give you something, Caius said, but I did not know what gift could possibly match what you have given me. My heart, my kingdom, my son or daughter. He took her hands. And then I realized, the only gift worthy of you is a promise. He knelt before her, and Marin's breath caught. When we were first bonded, I told you I would never love you. I told you I could not. His voice was steady, his silver eyes bright with emotion he no longer had to suppress. I was wrong. I have never been more wrong about anything in my life. Caius, let me finish. Please. He squeezed her hands. I love you, Marin. Not because the bond demands it, Not because you saved my life or healed my heart or carry my child. I love you because you are brave and fierce and kind, because you refuse to be owned even when it cost you everything, because you looked at a broken king and saw someone worth saving. He rose, pulling something from his pocket. A ring. Not the simple silver band she had thrown in his face 6 months ago, but something new. Gold, set with a stone that glowed like captured sunlight. This belonged to the last queen of the sunborn, he said. Celia found it in the archives, hidden away by those who feared what it represented. I had it restored for you. He slipped it onto her finger. Will you marry me again, Marin? Not as a political arrangement, not as a contract, but as a choice. My choice. Forever. Marin looked at the ring on her finger, at the man before her, at the life she had built from the ashes of everything she thought she had lost. Yes, she said. 1,000 times. Yes. The flame on the altar blazed higher as he kissed her, golden light filling the tower, visible from every corner of the kingdom. 3 months later, Prince Alaric Salarius Valdris was born. He had his father's silver eyes and his mother's warmth, and the nurses reported that he glowed faintly when he was happy, that small sparks danced above his cradle when he dreamed. The first sunborn prince in 300 years. Marin held him in her arms and wept with joy, and Caius held them both, and the bond between them sang with a love that had been worth every moment of pain that had led them here. The thawing, the people would say for generations to come, was not just about the weather. It was about a king who learned to love and a queen who taught him how. It was about breaking curses and building sanctuaries. It was about choosing warmth over cold, hope over fear, and love over duty. It was about two people who had been broken in different ways, finding the missing pieces of themselves in each other. And it was about happily ever after. Not the kind from fairy tales, where everything is perfect and nothing ever goes wrong, but the real kind. The kind that is built day by day, choice by choice, through arguments and apologies and compromises and countless small acts of love, the kind that lasts. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, let me know what you thought. I always read your comments, and they mean more than you know.